Mr. Bannon's podcast number 20, the Design Process Map. Before we look at the Design Process Map, it's worthwhile paying attention to the theory behind the process map. The process map's based on a cycle of continual improvement. This is where we aim to evaluate and respond to any changes within design and constantly improve on them. The improvement cycle can be represented as this four-quartered circle. The starting place of any improvement cycle is the planning stage, where planning takes place, and this allows us to move on to the do stage, where basically we carry out any suggestions recommended in the plan. Then we have the evaluation or checking stage, and once we have checked, we will either find that 1. Our design meets our specification and requirements, and then we have to think of how to improve it. Or we will find that there are shortcomings in the specification or our design, and we then have to act upon this. Now, this just doesn't need to be applied to product design. It can also be applied to things like your studies, homework and revision. Plan your homework and then do your homework, and check your homework at the end. And if you don't think something's right, or perhaps you haven't given it your best work, then act upon it, change something, do something different to make your homework better and homework in the future better. The design process map itself is made up of 12 separate areas, but there's overlap in each area, and once we get to the end of the design process map, it loops all the way back to the beginning in an evaluation cycle of continual improvement. So, to analyse this in a little bit more detail, I'm going to break the design process map down into two sections, and we'll look at it in a bit closer detail. The first half of the design process map starts with the problem or situation. Needs and wants, the starting place of every design process. This leads us on to a design brief, which can be either open or closed. We then have the analysis of the brief, and this is where the factors that influence design fit in to allow you to analyse the brief and break it down in more detail. This then leads on to investigation and research, investigating existing products already out in the market, conducting some sort of market research or questionnaire to ask people their opinions and ideas on the product. This then allows us to draw up an initial specification, which is specific points which our design will do. Things like it must, or it will be a certain size, or it will be made of, come into play at this stage. And then this allows us to start putting pencil to paper and sketching initial ideas based upon what we have analysed and researched in the stages before. At each stage, we have to refer to the stage before and even 2 or 3 stages before to get a full picture of the product we are designing, redesigning, or indeed inventing. Leading on from initial idea generation is the development of ideas area. And this is where 6 or 8 ideas that you've generated would be reduced through different processes, one being a morphological analysis, down to 2 or 3 final solutions that could solve the problem and brief. It's at this stage where we have to select a solution and start to produce prototypes and working prototypes of this solution. And by synthesising or pulling all our ideas together from the previous stages of the design process, we can then do this and produce for the client our vision of the product they have requested to be designed. If satisfactory, then we enter planning for manufacture, where we produce working drawings, we produce cutting lists and sequences of operations. The product's then sent for manufacture, and once manufactured, it's thoroughly tested and the whole process is evaluated, kicking off the continual improvement cycle where we plan, do, check and act. So that's the design process map in its 12-stage entirety. Remember, following this step by step can eliminate many different problems in design. But the most important thing to remember is the continual improvement cycle and design. Follow this at each stage of the design process, checking what comes before, and you should have a successful design.